Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very short folding knife review to share with you guys. This is the SOG Terminus XR LTE. I'm going to be talking about what this is, what the difference is between the other variants, which, by the way, all of the variants that you can get, including the very recommendable, inexpensive G10 and D2 one, will all be listed right down below. There are 3 different versions of this knife. You guys can check them all out. Thank you so much to the gentleman who sent this in for review. I appreciate that. He wishes to remain anonymous, and that's fine with me. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. There's a link for Patreon right down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This review is going to be short because I've already reviewed a version of this, and it's similar other than how they put it together and some of the materials. That original video accidentally got deleted when I tried to delete a duplicate of another upload. Anyways, so I have technically reviewed this before, but anyways, we're going to speed through this. I think I can get my thoughts out pretty quickly here. Overall length of the SOG Terminus XR LTE is 7 inches. Blade length is definitely under 3 inches, so that's great for people who live in an area with a 3-inch blade law. Cutting edge is 2.75 inches. Do a couple of size comparisons here up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Spyderco Para 3. Just real quick here, it's definitely smaller than both, even smaller than the Spyderco Para 3, but very similar in cutting edge. We'll put it up against the Rat 2 because it's very similar in overall size and length and profile even. It's a little taller, but it's very similar to the Rat 2 for sure. How about we do carry profile here real quick. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Can see here, it's actually coming in about the same thickness. The switches here, or the XR lock, do stick out past the frame a little bit, adding a little bit of excess thickness in one area. Just wanted you guys to be aware of that. How about height and length up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3? You can see here, it's not a super tall knife, even considering it's got a flipper tab. It's actually shorter. Well, it's about the same. We're at an angle here. It's a little tiny bit shorter than the Para 3. It's definitely shorter than the PM2, nowhere near as tall, even including the flipper tab. The PM2 and Para 3 definitely stick up a lot higher at that one point, so no issues there. Go ahead and do a hardware check real quick, get out my tools as per usual. Tools I use are very, very recommendable. I believe all of the hardware, including the pivot, is actually a T6. Let me check that here real quick. Pivot is a T6 on both sides, and the body screws are all T6 as well. And then the screw that's holding in the pocket clip, which I believe is that guy right there, it's just a long screw, is also a T6. So there you go. It doesn't have a lot of hardware. You are going to be dealing with that XR lock if you take it apart, so make sure you're confident you have a place to put all the hardware and make sure you've got quality tools to deal with those T6 heads. Let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here real quick. Got my calipers. I believe this is a pretty thin blade stock. There we go. About 105 thousandths there. It's about what I expected. Wait! What's the difference between this and the XR? The carbon fiber version of the Terminus XR. Because there's another one that's listed in S35VN with carbon fiber, right? Yeah. So there are 3 versions of this. There's the D2 version with G10. There's the carbon fiber version with S35VN. And by the way, the D2 version comes in at like $54. The carbon fiber version, the other carbon fiber version with S35VN comes in at like $85, right? It's got steel liners. This is the same as far as I can tell, except the liners are carbon fiber. And I was like, what? I had to read that again. And I was like, the liners, there's no liners. So when I got to looking at this a little closer, it actually does have a separate piece of carbon. I don't understand that. Why not just make the whole... Why do we have separate pieces of carbon fiber? Why not just make the whole scale carbon fiber? Okay, so the weight on this guy versus the original, the carbon fiber version or the G10 version, they both weigh about 3.3 ounces. This weighs 2.3 ounces. Right? So it weighs an ounce less. Neat. At 3.3 ounces, it's basically ultra lightweight anyway. Yeah, you can get knives that weigh 1.5 ounces or 2 ounces or 2.5 ounces, right? Anything at 3 ounces or less, I consider ultra lightweight. So even though the original Terminus XR and G10, or the one that's in carbon fiber with the steel liners, is 3.3 ounces, this is just kind of a completely trivial difference to me. I'm not somebody who puts that much emphasis on weight. It's more so the dimensions and the design and what I can get out of it, right? This versus the same thing that weighs an ounce less in this territory is basically meaningless to me. But there you go. That's what's going on here, right? So this is the big reason that this is going to be super quick. Did we touch on everything? I feel like we did, right? It flips. The XR lock works, right? It's got that sliding bar that slides into the tang, much like the Benchmade Axis lock. We are looking at carbon fiber, 4 separate layers of it, as far as I can tell. Cryo-treated S35VN, right? These are premium materials, and the blade is going to work, right? Without going into as much detail as I usually do on the blade, it's a simple drop point blade. It gets fairly thin behind the edge. It's done well. I'm going to assume that it's heat treated correctly. I haven't heard anything bad's going on with SOG's S35VN. These knives are not made in the United States, right? But they've always had reasonable, even though that SOG's designs have never been like, wow, I'm super interested in them. The XR, the Terminus XR, has definitely been the most interesting thing they've done here lately. And the price that what they wanted for them was reasonable, right? This guy's got a different price tag. The gold on the blade, right? You don't have to. There's another version of the XR LTE that's just all black. That's kind of neat, right? It's also kind of mustardy. Okay. If you really like that contrast, then there you go. I'm more of a bronze and black kind of guy if we're going to have some type of color that's in this territory, but okay, right? We've got a paragraph on the blade. That didn't need to be there, but it is. No big deal. Terminus XR LTE studies and observations group, cryo CPM S35VN. I got no problem with the blade steel, right? In fact, even for what they want with this knife, the blade steel is not the problem. The carbon fiber, and it's the same as the other one that I handled, it just kind of looks cheap. It's kind of that reflective kind of, we see this carbon fiber on budget knives from the $30 to $50 territory. It's kind of that weird shiny stuff. The scales are also blocky, and there's a really sharp 90-degree angle on the inside of this. They have milled out the other liner on the inside. It's just so confusing to me. I mean, they could have just done 2 pieces of carbon fiber and milled those out and had the same result. But instead we've got carbon fiber and then a carbon fiber liner and the same thing on the other side, and the carbon fiber liners are milled out. The backspacer is also carbon fiber. That's neat, right? I mean, if this was 2014 and everyone was still like, carbon fiber, right? I mean, listen, carbon fiber is still cool. It's just like, this is such an odd thing that I'm not sure needed to be. The XR is a truly, the Terminus XR LTE is a truly ambidextrous design, considering we've got this XR lock here. And it operates smoothly, right? I mean, it operates the way as intended. The pocket clip can be switched over, for true left-handed carry at right-handed. So if you're ambidextrous or you're left or you're right-handed, whatever, right? This knife will work for you. The knife flips. You can do light switch. You can do a push button. It flips, right? Release of the XR lock here, kind of gritty, kind of not super great. Kind of feels kind of gross and really cheap. Action, bumpy, lumpy, gritty, weird. The knife is so light and the carbon fiber is so cheap feeling that it just, the whole thing just feels kind of like a toy. It feels real. It doesn't feel like lightweight, balanced, super ultra quality. It just feels like a knife that was already small and lightweight to begin with. They made no changes to the overall quality of everything, which didn't need to be the case in the other designs because they were less expensive. And then they just made it lighter because I don't remember everybody going, oh my gosh, the Terminus is so heavy at 3.32 ounces. I simply cannot carry this. I'm being weighed down. It's as if gravity itself has me tied to the earth or tethered to the ground. No, nobody was saying that. I know it sounds like I'm really coming down on this, right? And I'm coming to the crescendo of this because normally I'm not that ugh. It does lock out solid, right? No blade play up, down, left, and right. And this one's a little bit off center, but this was owned by somebody else, right? I mean, SOG knives I don't think are always going to be perfectly on center. I don't think this would be difficult to adjust. There's a trick with the pivot and the body screws. I've got a video on it. You can center it, right? I would hope they would come perfectly centered from the factory, but Maybe they don't. You know, at the cheaper territory, the other variants of this, right? It's not that big of a deal. In this territory, it should always be centered, but I'm willing to give this one a kind of a pass because it was owned by somebody else, right? The blade does suck into place pretty well. I mean, it's kind of that point of no return or event horizon kind of situation you have with Benchmade Axis style knives where there's tension right there and then it just pulls it in, right? So the, you know, the scales feel cheap. They've been lightened up for whatever reason, no idea. The disengagement of the XR lock feels really not good. The action, while it does flip, right, and you can sort of swing it shut, the quality of the action is not good. Corners of the carbon fiber and just overall appearance of the carbon fiber, it just feels cheap. It just doesn't feel finished, right? What do they want for this? It's the same thing as the Terminus XR, the S35VN and carbon fiber one, except instead of steel liners, it has carbon fiber liners. What was that one? The other one that I was talking about, the one with steel liners, it's 85 bucks. What's this one? $140. Why? Listen, I don't have anything against SOG. I mean, up to this point, they haven't really done a whole lot that's interested me. And then they did this Terminus, these Terminus series knives, right? Terminus XR, D2, and G10. Great. 54 bucks. Sure. Absolutely. Feels great with the steel liners. The one with the carbon fiber and S35VN, if you really want it, okay, they're not charging that much for it, right? 85 bucks. All right. It's not bad. I'm not super into their carbon fiber. It's much like this, but okay. Not bad. What? So now we've got carbon fiber liners, and when we, you know, reduce the weight by 1 ounce, and you want, what do they want? They want $55 more? Is that right? $55 more? No. No. I'm sorry. Listen, the XR, it's really cool that they did this because the Terminus XR is definitely the best thing that I've ever seen from SOG. Definitely. I mean, it's got like and let me be fair here. This knife will function just fine. Like, I'm not saying you're going to take this thing out and it's going to fall apart, but I expect a certain amount of quality by, you know, in terms of price territory. And I'm notorious, not notorious. I'm well known for being pretty easy on certain designs and certain price ranges, even when they teeter outside of it. I'll be like, well, it's probably not for these people, but it might be for these people. I'm not convinced this needed to be made at all. I mean, I just don't understand, like, who exactly this was made for. Who was so upset with the original weight of the XR that they're willing to pay $55 more for it to be reduced by 1 ounce in overall weight? I just don't get it. The most recommendable version of this knife is the D2 and G10 version of it. That's great. And I really don't have a problem with the $85 one, right? You're still getting S35VN and carbon fiber. You're not getting the best overall fit and finish quality, this or that, right? They definitely have some polishing they need to do to keep up with their direct competition, even at those lower price points. But I mean, even some of the most mediocre stuff that I've reviewed between $100 and $150 on this channel easily beats this thing. There's no reason to spend. I mean, I'm not normally this negative, and usually I don't tear things apart. The only reason I'm talking about this is because the less expensive variants, usually if I just really hate something, I won't even do a video on it, right? But I want to point out that there are good versions of this. Definitely. There are recommendable versions of this knife, and you can get them down in the description. Not this. Don't spend $140 on this when you can get the same thing. The same thing, but it weighs an ounce heavier for way less. This just doesn't make sense to me. So one of the first truly negative reviews that I've done in a long time. I was so, like, caught off guard. And no offense to the person who sent this to me. I appreciate you sending this to me. Again, the Terminus is a great design at a lower price point. But I'm glad that I knew that this existed so that I could understand this and so that other people could understand this. I mean, this is still helpful and beneficial. The overall look of this knife is pretty good too, right? I honestly don't mind the mustard gold finish. I just don't get why this needed to exist. So now we're going on a 15-minute video. So it didn't end up being very short, but I think that's really all I need to say. If you're really wanting to go with this knife, don't go with this one. Go with one of the less expensive ones. Thank you sincerely to the person who sent this in for review. I do appreciate that. I will be going back to that person. Thank you all for watching today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive, that are expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.